So who is Jesus? Some think he was just one of many moral teachers who have existed throughout history. Others see him as something of a deluded rabbi, while others wonder if Jesus ever really existed. Perhaps he was just a myth. So what are we to make of Jesus of Nazareth? Well, there's plenty of historical evidence that Jesus really lived in first century Palestine, that he claimed to be the Messiah, that he was executed by crucifixion, and 3 days later, his tomb was found to be empty. There's also plenty of historical evidence that many claim to have seen Jesus alive from the dead, and therefore left everything to follow him and proclaim his gospel. So who is Jesus? Throughout this series, I hope to show you why I'm convinced that he is God's Messiah, Savior to a fallen world, and King over God's kingdom, which he came to restore. But to do that, I need to take you all the way back to the beginning of the story we find ourselves in, to the God who was there before there was anything else, who created all things and us as human beings in his image, to enjoy a face-to-face, soul-surrounding, self-defining relationship with him, through which we would experience life as it was meant to be. This was the kind of relationship that Adam and Eve enjoyed with God in Eden, as they experienced life as it was meant to be, until they followed the temptation of the devil to rebel against God, plunging themselves and us, their descendants, under the curse of sin. Now alienated from God, who is the source of life, they became alienated from themselves, from one another, and from the rest of creation. And that's really bad news. But it's followed by some really good news. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. Right after Adam and Eve rebelled against God, but immediately before God pronounced judgment upon them, the judgment they deserved for their rebellion against him, God spoke to the devil directly, the one who had tempted Adam and Eve to rebel against God, saying to the evil one, "I will put enmity between you, devil, and the woman." Now it's interesting that God focuses on the woman Eve here instead of Adam, since, as we'll see moving forward, Adam was the head of our race. But God is laying the groundwork here for the remarkable role that woman, specifically Mary, the mother of Jesus, a descendant of Eve, would play in bringing Messiah into the world, which becomes clear as God says to the evil one here in Genesis 3:15, "I will put enmity between you, devil, and the woman, and between your offspring or seed and her offspring or seed. And he," a particular male offspring of the woman, "at some point in the future shall bruise or crush your head, devil." In other words, he, this promised champion, Messiah of God, will utterly destroy you, devil, and your plan to thwart God's good plans for mankind. In the process, you, devil, shall only bruise his heel. In other words, you will injure this Messiah Savior to come, but you will not destroy him utterly. Instead, he will utterly destroy you. And that's good news. That God promised to send a Messiah who would destroy the works of the devil, conquer the power of sin and death, and thereby restore to us a right relationship with him as he reestablishes his righteous reign upon the earth. Next week, we'll consider how the Old Testament gives us something of a genealogical roadmap to the Christ who was to come, that we might find our hope in him. But right now, I want to encourage you to consult your deepest intuitions about the story you find yourself in. I'll bet that deep down you know that your life isn't ultimately without purpose, that you aren't randomly existing on planet Earth, but that you were created by God to know and thrive in him. But I'll bet you also know deep down, if you have the courage to admit it, that neither you nor your world are what we were meant to be, that the fall is real, and that we are all in desperate need of the restoration and renewal that only God's Messiah can bring. Throughout this series, I hope to show you why I'm convinced that Jesus of Nazareth is God's Messiah, perfect Savior for a fallen world, righteous King over God's kingdom he came to restore. Until next time, I'm John Mitchell, and this is Theo Talk.